It was a cold Christmas morning, and I was home alone, trying to cope with the loneliness that always seemed to find me on such a holiday. The ice storm outside had canceled our family's Christmas plans, and my mother's message appeared on my phone screen. Catherine, everyone is home due to the storm. Christmas dinner has been canceled. Stay safe. I read those words with a sigh of disappointment. But in truth, something told me that it wasn't just the storm that was keeping me away from them. I'm Catherine. I'm 32. I'm an accountant. And until that Christmas, I believed that I was just different. The quiet, career-oriented sister who didn't fit in well with the noisy social gatherings. While my younger sister, Anna, was the star of the family, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I found myself in a kind of emotional isolation, where I always seemed to be the wrong one, the less important one. That day, I decided to spend Christmas my way. A quiet afternoon with hot chocolate and movies, trying to convince myself that loneliness was just part of my process of becoming self-sufficient. But around 3 p.m., while I was browsing social media, something happened. My heart stopped. A new photo appeared on Instagram. Christmas at Anna's house. There was my entire family gathered around a festive dinner table. My parents, uncles, aunts, cousins, even my grandmother, everyone was there, smiling, celebrating with colorful sweaters and that cozy atmosphere that seemed to have been made especially for them. And me, I was absent. The ice storm? A lie. A convenient excuse to exclude me. Those images were a direct blow to my heart. I saw my father carving the turkey, my mother decorating her Christmas cookies, my nieces and nephews opening presents. I was outside watching everything through the window of their perfect lives, without even an explanation. Every time I was told that events were canceled and I wasn't invited, it was a lie. They gathered without me, laughing and celebrating while I was left out. How could I have been so blind? How many moments of my life had they hidden from me? The next morning, my mother called me as if nothing had happened. "Hi, honey. I hope you had a nice, peaceful Christmas. We've missed you." Her words felt like a sharp blade, cutting deeper than I thought possible. The truth was undeniable now, and that was when everything changed. I grew up trying to be the good daughter. The daughter who helped around the house, who sacrificed herself to please, who gave up her own dreams to fit in with other people's plans. I studied accounting because it was the right path, because my parents insisted. While my sister Anna was seen as brave for going her own way and dropping out of college to become a yoga instructor. While I worked extra hours to help pay the mortgage, they barely acknowledged my efforts. I remember a moment that should have been my wake-up call, but I didn't see it. 3 years ago, my father needed surgery. I asked for 3 weeks off work to take care of him, and instead of being thanked, I was treated like an obligation. I didn't get a simple thank you. There was no recognition. Nothing. But that Christmas was the turning point. It was the moment I realized that for too long, I had allowed myself to be invisible in my own life. I no longer had to conform. I no longer had to be the good daughter. I no longer had to live according to anyone's expectations. This was my call to freedom. The moment I finally realized that I deserved to be valued, loved, and respected, not because of my appearance or the expectations of others, but because of who I am, my essence. I am enough in my own way, and I don't need to fit into anyone's mold. If you are feeling lost, undervalued, or simply invisible, know that change begins within you. Don't let other people's expectations define your worth. True power lies in breaking free from the invisible chains that bind us and living in our own truth. I want to know, are you ready to change too? It's time to take control of your life and start writing your own story. Don't let anyone dim the light that is yours alone. Share your journey of self-discovery or any moment that changed your perspective in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories. Your transformation starts now. In those 3 years that I cared for my father, something inside me began to change, even if I didn't know it yet. When I returned to work after that period, I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and the recognition I expected never came. The words of gratitude that were never spoken were replaced by more expectations, more tasks. And deep down, something inside me knew that this could not continue. But like any good soldier, I kept going, hiding behind the role of the obedient daughter, the exemplary professional. It was at that moment, on that cold Christmas morning, looking at those photos on Instagram, that I finally saw the truth. I was sacrificing myself for a love and respect that would never be reciprocated. I had become a shadow in the lives of the people who should have mattered most to me. And the pain was not just in the fact of being left aside, but in what that represented, the lack of self-love, the passive acceptance of my own invisibility. But that day, something inside me snapped. The snap was like an internal storm that swept everything away. I realized that the change I was looking for would not come from outside. It would not come from their approval. It could only come from me. I had the power to redefine who I was, the power to write a new story for my life, a story where I was the protagonist, where my voice had weight, where I was finally valued. The pain of that discovery threw me into a sea of conflicting emotions, but at the same time, it brought me clarity. I no longer needed to continue seeking their approval. I no longer needed to be the quiet sister, the submissive daughter, the one who accepted crumbs of affection and attention. I needed to rebuild myself. I needed to be the most authentic version of myself, with courage, with confidence, with boldness. And what I knew for sure was that, although the journey would be difficult, it would be worth every step. That's how I began to search for my own path. Like when you get lost in the middle of a storm, but find the strength to move forward, knowing that no matter how dark the path may be, you always have the ability to seek the light. It was with this spirit that I made the decision to start over. I didn't know exactly where this journey would take me, but something inside me told me that I deserved more. I deserved the freedom to be who I really am, without fear of judgment, without fear of being excluded. And it was with this thought that I took the first step. It was the beginning of a new Catherine, a woman who finally allowed herself to put herself first. And I ask you, who are watching now, how many times have you put yourself in second place to please others? How many times have you accepted crumbs of love and respect, without realizing that you have the right to receive the banquet of life? It doesn't matter where you are right now. What matters is that you have the power to rewrite your story. The time to act is now. I want to know, what is your truth? What have you been keeping inside that you haven't allowed yourself to live? Don't wait any longer. Don't wait for approval that will never come. The time to act is now. Share your experiences in the comments. Talk about your own moments of transformation. Let's create together a community of strength, self-knowledge, and courage. And remember, you are capable. Change is within your reach. I was always the daughter who was there, willing to help, to carry the weight. I cooked, cleaned, took my father to appointments, and administered his medications. Meanwhile, Anna would pop up every now and then, taking selfies with him for social media, and then disappear, claiming she was on a yoga retreat. But somehow in my parents' narrative, Anna was the devoted daughter, and I was just doing the bare minimum. And what was the bare minimum? When you pour your heart and soul into caring for someone, but it's never enough to be recognized. In our family, Anna's story always seemed to be the brighter, more interesting one. While my accomplishments at work were dismissed as boring, Anna's adventures, like teaching yoga in Bali, were celebrated with enthusiasm. And me, I sat there, trying not to care, trying to accept that somehow they loved me in their own way. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Just a month ago, I spent hours helping my mom prepare for Thanksgiving, only to be told, yet again, that Anna had done all the work while I was sitting around. I swallowed my pain, as I always did, and kept quiet, always trying to believe in the fiction of our happy family, always convincing myself that if I just tried harder, worked harder, gave more, they would finally see that I was worthy. I would finally be part of the perfect picture. But this Christmas, it was different. When Anna announced that she would be hosting Christmas, I offered to help with the planning and cooking. She brushed me off, saying that she wanted it to be perfect, as if I were incapable of contributing to anything that would be worthy of her vision of perfection. I didn't see it at the time, but the signs were there. All the years of exclusion, all the lies, all the canceled events that turned into secret get-togethers I was never invited to. It was all starting to make sense. And then the next day, my mother's text, "Hi, honey. Hope you had a peaceful Christmas. We missed you." The false joy in her words made my stomach churn. When I looked at the photos on Instagram, the evidence was there, the perfect gathering, the family gathered around the Christmas table. Everyone except me. The lie was laid bare before my eyes. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. I finally saw the truth. The pain I felt wasn't just about being left out, but about realizing that this pain had been intentional. I was being treated like a burden, an inconvenience, a shadow in their lives. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to stay calm. But my mother's words, the silence on the other end of the line, all of it was the catalyst for my inner revolution. I knew something had to change. I had to ask, how many other times have you lied to me about the secret get-togethers? How many times have I been left out while everyone was there, celebrating? And when I asked that, silence was the answer. The empty excuse my mother tried to come up with, "You're always so busy with work," was the last push I needed. The job she was talking about wasn't just a job. It was my life. I was there, helping pay the mortgage, taking care of my dad after his surgery, doing what no one else was doing. And yet, it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. It was then that, for the first time, I stood up and told the truth. I wasn't the problem. I never had been. I was being disrespected, rejected, ignored. And the moment I said it, something broke inside me. I could no longer hide behind excuses. I could no longer live in the shadow of the perfect family that excluded me. I had to be true to myself. I didn't have a family. I had people who shared my DNA, but who treated me like an afterthought to what they expected of me. And the moment I realized that, something inside me snapped. I was done being the good daughter, the quiet sister. I was done being ignored and undervalued. I was ready for a change. I opened my laptop and started writing an email that would mark a new era for me. An email to all of them. My parents, my sister, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, everyone who was at that Christmas dinner. It was time to tell the truth, without fear, without excuses. Because in the end, the only thing that really matters is the truth. And when you face it, there's nothing that can hold you back. That moment was my liberation. I refused to hide behind the lies and the masks that my family wore any longer. I decided to be myself, unapologetically. I am enough on my own terms. My fingers flew across the keyboard, and with each word, a wave of pent-up emotions, years of pain and frustration, were finally released. I was writing the truth my family had tried to hide from me for so long. I saw the Christmas photos they told me had been canceled because of an imaginary ice storm. But there was no such thing as an ice storm, only the lie they had created to exclude me. I wanted everyone to know exactly what had happened. This wasn't just a simple family gathering I had missed. It was a plan, a silent coordination, an elaborate lie to make me spend Christmas alone. With shaking hands, I attached the screenshots of the text messages, the messages my mother had sent me telling me to stay home while everyone else was gathering without me. I also attached the photos of their celebration, posted on social media, showing what they had tried to hide from me. And before I could even question whether I should do it, I hit send. The responses started coming in almost immediately. My aunts, my uncles, all trying to downplay the situation, suggesting that I was overreacting. Even my cousin, who had posted the Christmas photos, quickly deleted them and texted me saying that I was causing unnecessary drama. But what really cut me was Anna's response. She wrote a long, condescending email, trying to convince me that I never made an effort for family events, that she just wanted a perfect holiday. And she had the audacity to say that excluding me was actually for my own good, because I obviously don't like family gatherings. I felt like I was being ripped out of a reality I had constructed, a world where lies seemed to be the only truth. And that's when my parents reacted in the most devastating way. Instead of apologizing, they went on the offensive. My mom started calling family friends, making up a story about how I was having some kind of emotional breakdown. My dad sent me a stern email, telling me to respect the family's privacy and that airing our dirty laundry was unacceptable. I was trying to be honest, trying to finally confront the lie that had blindsided me for so long. And somehow I was the villain. They twisted everything, doing everything they could to make me look bad. Anna started posting on social media about toxic people and choosing peace over family, while my dad threatened to cut me out of his will if I didn't get in line. But deep down, I knew what these actions really meant. This wasn't an attempt to fix me or help me be better. This was a desperate effort to maintain control over someone who ultimately refused to play by his rules. It was then that I realized I needed to do more than just expose the lies. I needed to free myself completely from their manipulation. I was already preparing a plan. Little did they know, but that email I had sent would only be the beginning. A week later, I received an unexpected message from Rachel, an old family friend who had been in charge of my parents' finances years ago. She asked me out for coffee. When we met, she seemed nervous but determined. She pulled out a manila envelope and said, "I've been carrying the guilt of this for years. Your father swore me to secrecy, but after seeing how they're treating you now, I can't keep quiet any longer." As I opened the envelope, a stack of bank statements and legal documents were slid in front of me. As I read them, my hands began to shake. My grandfather had left me a significant inheritance, specifically earmarked for my future education, nearly $300,000. Money I had never known existed. And worst of all, my father was the trustee of this inheritance. I felt a mixture of anger, disbelief, and sadness. How had I never known about this? How could my own family keep something so important from me? Rachel explained that for years, she had managed the funds according to my grandfather's instructions, but had never been informed that the money had been used. Now, she was handing me the key to a new freedom. I had something I never knew existed, an inheritance that could give me the independence I needed to finally cut ties with this toxic family. In that moment, I realized I was faced with a choice. I could continue to be a pawn on their board, playing by their rules, living a lie. Or I could choose my freedom, my truth, and follow my own path. I chose the latter. What I learned was painful but necessary. Truth always has the power to set us free, but it also has the power to transform us. When we finally stand up to the lies, the manipulation, and the control, that is when we discover our true strength. I finally saw that as difficult as it was, the greatest inheritance I could receive was my own freedom. My mind was clear and focused. Every word I wrote, every action I took, was an affirmation that I was no longer at the mercy of a rigged system, nor their destructive behavior. The group that had called me different, that had tried to make me feel like a burden, now stood before me, unable to deny the truth that I had pieced together with surgical precision. They could try to twist the story, but now it was my turn to own the narrative. Time passed, and eventually the pressure became unbearable for my mother, father, and Anna. As the reality of the situation sank in, all that was left was a desperate attempt to erase the guilt and maintain the facade of the perfect family. But I was no longer willing to be the silent victim, to play the role of the good daughter or the understanding sister. I was faced with a choice: continue to allow myself to be disrespected, or finally take control of my own life and my own story. That meeting in my apartment was the turning point. There were no more excuses or empty justifications. I had spent my life trying to please them, trying to fit into a mold that did not belong to me. But in that moment, I had the truth, I had control. And that was priceless. When the last chance was given, when the folders full of evidence and the legal threats were on the table, it was clear that my goal was not revenge, but justice. A step back? No, not anymore. The only choice now was transparency, brutal honesty, and final resolution. I had woken up, finally realizing that it was not about accepting love disguised as control, nor subjecting myself to the toxic behavior of those who should support me unconditionally. In the days that followed, the messages in our family group were inconsistent, turbulent, and filled with outrage. What surprised me, however, was my own peace. I was no longer shaken by their words. I was building a new life, a life where respect and truth would be the foundation of everything. Now the decision was in their hands. either do the right thing or face the consequences. And I was ready to move forward with or without them. This journey, this confrontation was my rebirth. What they had put me through over the years was not a reflection of my worth. And in finally freeing myself from their manipulation, I discovered my strength, the strength of a woman who is not afraid to cut the ties that bind her to the past. I had the evidence and the truth on my side. The ball was in their court now, as I had told Sarah on the phone that night. But something told me they would not make the right decision. I was prepared for whatever came next. Either way, they had already given me the greatest gift, freedom from their manipulation. The 48-hour deadline came and went exactly as I had expected. My family chose pride over honesty. They did not sign the confession or transfer the funds. Instead, they tried to destroy evidence, closing accounts, shredding documents, and even pressuring Rachel to recant her statement. What they didn't know was that I had already sent everything to the authorities. The morning after the deadline, I filed the charges. By afternoon, the police were at their door with search warrants. I watched from my office as it all unfolded. My father was handcuffed and escorted from his job. Anna's yoga studio was seized as stolen property, and my mother's carefully constructed image was shattered when she was arrested during one of her charity meetings. The family chat room exploded again, but this time with a very different tone. Relatives who had previously dismissed my allegations kept quiet when the evidence became public. The local newspaper ran a story about the fall of the perfect family they had tried so hard to maintain. In a single day, the entire facade came crashing down. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "You did the right thing. Your grandfather would be proud." She was right. This was no longer about revenge, but about justice. As I watched my family's lies crumble, I felt no pleasure, only relief. The truth was finally out, and more importantly, I was free. A year later, I sat in my new home in Denver, watching the snow fall outside my window. The court case had been over for months. My parents had reached a plea agreement and agreed to pay restitution. Anna's yoga empire had crumbled, and she finally got a real job as a receptionist. The image of a perfect family they had tried so hard to maintain was gone forever. Most of the relatives who had enabled this behavior over the years stopped talking to me. But surprisingly, I didn't miss them. Instead, I had built a new circle of support. True friends, colleagues who respected my work, and even a few distant cousins who apologized for their past behavior. Last week, Rachel visited me for coffee. She handed me an old photo album she had found while cleaning out her office. Inside were pictures of my grandfather and me, moments I had almost forgotten. In one of them, he was teaching me how to fish, and we were both laughing about something I can't even remember anymore. He always said I was the strong one, Rachel told me, and even though he knew Anna was the favorite, he believed I could get through it. I touched the photo fondly, remembering his gentle smile. He had tried to protect my future with that inheritance. And though it took years, his greatest gift to me was more than the money. It was the courage to stand up for myself and the freedom to build a life on my own terms. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting revenge. It's simply breaking free.